Ever had one of those nights that starts out like any other, but ends up being the best night of your life? I did. Our goal that night was simple. 12 pubs, 12 pints, from the first post to the world's end. But that night, we never made it.
I saw the boys the other day. We're going to go back to Newton Haven.
Why?
5 guys, 12 pubs, 50 pints. 60 pints.
Steady on, you alky.
This is our chance to finally finish what we started. We are going to do the Golden Mile, and this time
We are going to see it through to the bitter end.
or lager end. Good evening, Raymondo. The prodigal son's return.
Hi.
What do you recommend?
Beer. One tap, what's this?
What? What the hell is this? Why are we even here?
We are here to get annihilated.
You come back and everything's sort of weird.
I suggest you get on your way.
It's not us that's changed. It's the town.
Today with me are Christopher Theokas and Keith Miller. Say hi, guys.
Hey, guys.
Hello, audience.
So,
Hello to all the beautiful people out there in the world.
all the beautiful screenwriters.
I said people, not screenwriters. Let's be honest here.
Yeah,
The screenwriters are not people.
we are Morlocks, essentially.
To say
They
the
hide in
least.
our cave with alcohol.
Yes. Oh, speaking of which, I am instituting something that we used to do at the NYCSC, a one-drink minimum.
Ah, shit. Hang on. Give me a second.
Oh, man. All right. So while Chris runs off, let me talk a little bit about what we're doing tonight. First off, the Script is the official podcast of the New York City Screenwriters Collective. We are a collective, a group of screenwriters working together to help each other with our scripts. We have weekly meetings here in NYC, and we talk about each other's scripts, talk about pro scripts. We have a couple podcasts. This is the Beat Sheet edition. During this, what we do is we take what is really the final draft of the script, which is the one you see on the screen, and we break it down using Blake Snyder's Beat Sheet. This is the Beat Sheet, the storied and challenged Beat Sheet from the essential book, Save the Cat. So we just kind of like to do this, look at the movie through these 15 beats, and if you're not familiar with them, you can go to our website. We'll provide that information. You can take a look. We have the beats hammered down so you know what they are. I also encourage you to go out there and buy that book, read that book. Agree with it, don't. It's a great kind of essential book on story structure. So today we are doing The World's End. Guys, what do we think of The World's End?
I really liked it. I love, this trilogy, and I like the filmmaker. I like Edgar Wright. I loved Scott Pilgrim versus the World, even though it's not his
Well, it's
usual
not really
crew.
part of the milieu, but
Say again?
I would say it's, Scott Pilgrim is really not part of that universe.
Oh, no, but I mean, even though it's not the same team working, I mean, I loved Spaced. I loved Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz. When I saw Hot Fuzz, it was at a special screening where Nick Frost and Simon Pegg were there answering questions. So, so I was really excited for this. And I got to say, it's probably one of the best things I've seen this year, if not the best thing I've seen this year.
So, I mean, out of all that, you seem to have forgotten Paul.
I liked Paul, but it seems
call.
like it was kind of missing the Edgar Wright touch, I guess you could say. I mean, not that to say that it
I
was
agree.
bad. It's just like, I think Nick Frost
missing something.
and Simon Pegg have a great chemistry, but it's like if you don't have the Edgar Wright touch, or whatever it is he does, I think it's an affection for the genre in general, because all of the movies he's done have been genre pictures. So Shaun of the Dead's the horror film, Hot Fuzz is the action film. Even Scott Pilgrim I always describe Scott Pilgrim as a video game movie based on a comic book. So it's like he just loves this niche stuff, and so Edgar Wright, and so obvious. I think that comes through whenever he makes something.
But
And
these
so
are
that we
These
Wait,
are genre bending, right? These
Yeah.
we think about them as genre flicks, but he really turns genre on its ear, right? I mean, you've got the horror comedy, you've got the buddy cop. I mean,
Comedy.
it's all kind of comedy,
Yeah.
but it's offbeat. It's British in a way in tone, but it's also it's got its own kind of cleverness to it.
And they're always like on the genre itself. I mean, Shaun of the Dead is a pretty meta picture in terms of like, you know, zombie movies. It's a movie, an affectionate comedy about zombie movies, which is actually a really good zombie movie.
Oh, sure,
And-
and Hot Fuzz is definitely a love letter to 80s 90s action movies.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. And it's like, that's what I mean. It's like these guys love the genres. Because I guess I would include Simon Pegg in this as well. He has the oft-quoted internet quote about being what it means to be a geek. And so, you know, it's clear their affection. So I was looking forward to World's End. And I didn't go opening night, but I was pretty much first in line when I got into I was at the BAM Cinemas when I went to see it. So
Oh,
it was
nice.
a classy joint. It was a classy joint that I went to see it in.
I saw it in Queens, so.
Yeah,
Hey,
I saw
don't
the
knock
Union
Queens.
Square, less classy joint, and I have to say, much like Chris, I myself, I enjoyed it a lot. You know, this for me, it goes back to space, and it's wonderful to sort of see the evolution of the creative team from, you know, this television series, and then move on into pictures, and also the evolution of the characters that they've developed in space as they worm their way through the trilogy.
Yeah. How many spaced actors did you see in The World's End? Because the woman at I want to say at the hotel is the landlady
Marsha.
in space.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. See, that was, and I kind of looked out, but you know, after a while, you're just kind of or at least I was just in the story, so I didn't bother.
Now, I've forgotten. Sometimes, like, I blank on sort of like the minutia. Bad writer. But was the Winchester part of the 12 pubs?
No, I don't think it
No,
was.
no,
No.
the Winchester was not. Okay.
That would have been kind of. I don't know how I would have felt about that. I wouldn't have hated it, but okay, here we go. Okay, never mind. I thought I had the names of the clubs, and I do not.
Nah. They were good names. So let's before we get into the beat sheet real quick, I want to bring up something, and you mentioned it earlier, Chris. Is these three movies as a trilogy, right?
Yeah.
Because it wasn't a trilogy back when we saw Dawn of the Dead. It's kind of like it is and it isn't. So,
Right. They didn't
what's up with that?
I think ultimately it's a thematic trilogy because there are no recurring characters that I'm aware of. Obviously, loads of recurring actors, and you know, appear in all of them. Not just Simon Pegg and Nick Frost, but you know, Martin Freeman's at least in Shaun of the Dead. You know, and they have spaced actors in it from time to time. I want to say no, that's not one. But it seems, I was thinking about this the other day. It seems to be about hitting the decade between your 30, you know, hitting 30 and hitting 40, because I think they've said explicitly that Shaun of the Dead is about hitting 30. What am I going to do with the rest of my life? You know, am I going to stop being a slacker? And then World's End is about hitting 40. I mean, clearly they talk about either hitting 40 or being in their 40s and looking back on their life.
Can we safely say that every screenwriter has probably written something about turning 30, 40, 50?
I would almost say, you know, like, yes, specifically to those, but like every time you write something that's like thematically heavier than your typical screenplay, it's always about some kind of thing going on in your life. I mean, I always suspect that when, I forget who wrote it, but whoever wrote Die Hard must have been having a problem in their marriage. Because, you know, it's like thematically the log line is a guy trying to prove his worth to his estranged wife. And if you look at Hot Fuzz, to me, you know, it's a little more difficult to pin down, but it seems like Hot Fuzz is like, I'm in my mid-30s, this is where my life is going, and then it derails, because the point of Hot Fuzz was, I guess his officer, or you know, Angel is the character's name, his life was going on one track, and then he gets reassigned to Sanford, which is a sleepy small town in England.
Sure. And these are all people, in all three of these movies, these are people who seem to not have their shit together quite as much as they believe.
Yeah, I mean, arguably Hot Fuzzy has his shit so well together, it's tighter than a drum, and he has to loosen up. But that was just playing, I think, on typical action film tropes between like the opposing personalities in a buddy action film.
Sure, and even greater extremes. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great flick. All right, so let's get into the beat sheet. One thing I want to say, spoiler alert, the price of admission for this podcast is you have to have watched the movie, because we're going to spoil the shit out of it.
So if you're in New York City, it was $14. God, that hurt.
It's not so bad.
Well, it was kind of worth it, though.
Hey, at least you didn't have to see it in IMAX 3D.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. All right, so
our first beat is the opening image, and a lot of times when we talk about opening image, it does justice to talk about the closing image a little bit and how it's reflected. I don't want to get too much into the closing image, but what is our opening image here?
So it's literally the flashback to that fateful day in 1990 when Gary King grabs all his friends and they go on the first run of the Golden Mile and don't make it.
So
that's the first sequence, but the very opening.
The first image is actually of them sort of like the classic pose where it's like you have all the characters across the screen walking towards the audience.
The
world is open. Yeah, the world is open. Gary King is in the front. Everyone else is sort of like triangular behind them. And this is it. Like, freedom. They're done with school. And
well, I kind of get what Blue Blood is saying in that, it doesn't particularly kick off the action. But actually the reason I would bring it up is it does something that I know happens in Shaun of the Dead, in that they basically tell us what's going to happen in the movie.
Yeah.
And it's not literal. There's a lot of leeway in there. But in Shaun of the Dead, they say they're going to go pick up the girlfriend, they're going to go pick up mom and dad, or stepdad, they're going to go to the Winchester and wait for everything to blow over. And that's what happens.
And we're gonna relive that night, yeah.
Right.
And so with this, it's like this is the night that's going to happen. O-Man dropped out at this pub. I think it was Pete dropped out at that pub, and then we didn't make it to the end, but we're going to this night.
Yep. But to Keith's point, the very opening image, the thing that we see first is these guys walking into a bar. We see 5 pints lined up waiting for them, but we actually don't see those guys. What we see is 5 shadowy figures, right?
Yeah.
We see 5 blanks, right? We see five people without real identity. We don't know who they are, and as we go through the course of the movie, we're going to find out that they don't know who they are, right? So these are 5 blank slates coming for their beers. So I think it's a very apt opening image. It tells us a little bit about what the movie's going to be, even if it does so subversively.
I also liked the image. As much as I love this, I do think that there was they played kind of loose with structure, and because I think you could also make the argument that an opening image was Gary at his I'm going to say NA meeting, his Narcotics Anonymous meeting. But I prefer the one that you brought up, Chris, the blank figures. I think that one probably is the best.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. And one of the things that we've talked about before, we've talked about in the collective before, is that, these you can find these 15 beats anywhere in most movies. You can find them in The Wizard of Oz.
Right.
But the thing is that with comedies, the most important thing is to be funny, right? With horrors, the most important thing is to scare the shit out of you. Right. So with a comedy, it's sometimes the structure is very loose. Sometimes things are glanced over. But you're right. There are a lot of different instances of some of these things. I counted like 8 different statements of theme, right?
Right. Yeah.
So, but we'll get into that. Actually, let's get into that now. There is a setup, right? The setup is these guys went to do this great pub crawl, 20 years ago, and they never made it. 2 of them fell off. The rest of them just didn't quite make it.
Right.
But we find out that it is the greatest event of our main character's life, right? Of Simon Pegg's life, and that there's something quite messed up with him, and we don't really know. We can guess what it is, but he's kind of stuck in the past. He's And so the setup is him trying to round up his friends for one more go at this. You know, one big hurrah, because this is the most important thing he's ever done, and his life is kind of shit now.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty much the setup.
Cool. So in that setup, well, they go and they start hitting the pubs, right? So they make it to this town of Newton Haven, right?
Right.
Nice little British town name. And things start to go awry. But in there, we have a couple of they start drinking and everything seems normal. It's just five guys who kind of hate, one of them, or who have a lot of tension, and they're out there. They're trying to start drinking, and things are a little weird, right? So this is where we start to see a couple of themes pop up. So let's talk about what the themes are here and how they're being stated this early in the movie.
Well, one of the themes that I saw, and when I was thinking, I was trying to think about the umbrella theme, like the one theme that you can probably collapse the whole film, or actually hold the whole film under, right? And that's the idea that you have these lost opportunities and the ability to sort of regain them. Like, it's for him, it's more than sort of like, we didn't finish the pub 20 years ago. We didn't finish our pub crawl. We need to do it now. And it's actually more like our friendship has been derailed somewhere along the line, and this is my last-ditch attempt to sort of re-energize and bring us back together, with the idea of this pub crawl as a catalyst.
Yeah,
Sure.
right, yeah.
Sure.
One I took away was a couple. There are a lot in this, and
Yeah, there are.
and it's a lot of it. Just I think it's under the rubric of growing up, and just kind of, which a lot of their movies are about. It's like you
But growing
can't
up
go-
in their own way.
Yeah, and one of them is you can't go home again. I think I was reading an interview with Edgar Wright, and he talked about when he was, starting to do TV shows, that he would go visit his hometown, and it was like he was a stranger, and that everybody had changed, and it was like, pod people had taken over because nobody really recognized him. So you can't go home again because it's always changing. Another thing is, grow up. That was 1990. This is 2013, or whenever it takes place, 2012. We've all moved on from this. We've come to accept life as it is. And then, one thing that struck me with the ending, and this will, hopefully, if I remember, we'll talk about with the closing image, is that it's about what you were saying, Keith, about opportunities, but also like potential. Gary is a king in his own mind, but he's not living up to that potential at all. When they're getting ready to go to go on the pub crawl, when they're all getting ready to go on the train, the contrast between Gary's life, the images of Gary's life packing up compared to his friends is startling, because it's like a jail cell, which we come to find it's not a jail cell, but it's a hospital room. I thought he was like living in a shitty studio. And so it's like, this is a man not necessarily out of time, but not living up to his potential, which by the end we see that he's doing. Or I think he is anyway.
Well, actually, I mean, and time will, I guess there's time enough for that. But I actually had a problem with Gary's character, and we'll probably get to it later. Or
he's an asshole, right? You didn't like him.
It's not so much that I didn't like him, but yes, he is an asshole. The question was, I was trying to figure out that if there was an arc to his character, and then the other question is, well, did Gary need to have an arc? Is he the character that we look to for an arc in this film, or do we look at the other guys? Do we look at Andy, Knightley, Steven, Peter, and Oliver?
So let's talk about that a little bit, because this is something that's kind of important to me in the theme. And can we agree that Gary is the protagonist of the story, or at least is intended to be the protagonist, the primary driver of the story?
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah.
Okay. So one of the things that is pretty common, not universal, but certainly common, is that the statement of theme comes from somebody other than the protagonist, right? It's something somebody says offhanded or says to the protagonist. A lot of times it's kind of understated, but it's what the movie ends up being about.
I would say typically, yeah. I can name an exception or two, but yeah.
Sure. So I want to challenge what you guys have been saying about the theme a little bit. And so one, I will agree. As I said before, I think there are a couple of ways that theme is stated, and there are a couple of themes being played throughout this movie. So the first one I think is definitely grow up, or you're stuck you're stuck in your youth. The what is Frost's character's name? Andy. At one point he says, you're not 19 anymore, right? That's kind of a roundabout way of saying, grow the hell up. Why are you acting like this?
True.
I will say that there's another theme. I think a grander theme here, and you see it throughout the rest of the movie, and it's stated in a much more subtle way. And I think it's stated when we hit the second pub, okay? Because the second pub is the same as the first pub.
Yeah. The Starbucksification of the pub. Yeah.
And this is hilarious to me because so I was in England about 3 weeks ago. I was there with family, and all these pubs, pub that I heard about growing up that when my stepdad would go over there, he would frequent, and you go in and it's the Bell, it's the pub that's been around for 100 years, 200 years, whatever, but you go in and the sign says sizzling pubs, right? And
oh god,
and it's got a menu, it's got a pub menu that's that is a little bit less than say a Chili's, right?
Yeah. Oh man.
But
that's depressing.
Whatever. It'll
commercialization.
Yeah. But it'll do when you're drinking, and then we're gonna go to a couple nights later. We're gonna go to the Better Pub up the road, right? And we get there, and it's Sizzling Pubs.
And I knew you were going there, but it still hurts.
It's the exact same menu, right? I guess they had a better cook or whatever, but it was you're seeing this there, right? And so I think that actually kind of makes a statement, because I think it's making a little bit of a statement about homogeneity, right? About the Starbucksification, about people, kind of being blanks, about like what we find out that these antagonists, aliens or whatever they are trying to do, right? Like trying to make everything kind of homogenous.
Homogenized
Starbucksification.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Starbucksifies the world.
And so I think that scene there like sets that up in a subtle way, and I think that's like an understated statement of theme of the whole thing, because that's kind of the, as we find out, like the crazy thing is that to a certain degree, Gary is right. I mean, he's not right about wanting to stay 19, but he's right about like not wanting to be a stiff.
Right. Well, I mean, arguably, the argument. First off, let me say I definitely agree with you about that, because I would then ask, but I'm not going to just yet. But I would ask, like, do you think that extends just to growing old, that we become Starbucksified, that we become homogenized as we grow older? I need to find out a way to say that. Do we become homogenized as we grow older and become, we get stuck in these jobs? Because I have to admit, like, I know all the other characters, Andy and Pete and O-Man and so on. They all had different jobs, and they were stated. One was a car dealer, one was a real estate agent, whatever. I forget what Andy did. One was, he was what?
He was a lawyer.
Okay, so, but the thing is, like, they all seemed kind of, like, interchangeable in a lot of ways, at least visually speaking. And Gary, of course, has got the Sisters of Mercy T-shirt on. And
as soon as I saw that he was wearing a Sisters of Mercy T-shirt through the whole thing, that, like, when I saw that in the preview,
and then the tattoo.
Yeah, no, that was great. Of course, the only song they used was "This Corrosion," but I was just
a Fratelli song in there, but
yeah, I was just happy about it, But no, I'll say that I don't exactly agree with you that the other characters were cookie cutter. I would say that the three that made it, there at the end were the ones whose lives were kind of still fucked up, right? And
Yeah.
who even though they were
And not explicitly salesmen.
right. Well, but they're also the ones that even though they're not showing it, you know, at the beginning of the movie during the setup, they are the ones who are still living in the past, right? Because you've got the one guy who's pining away for the girl that got away.
Right,
and
Patty
you've got-
Considine's character.
Right, and then you've got Andy, Nick Frost's character, who is, you know, who is
He
just
still remembers the accident that cut his femoral artery.
the accident and how you know, Gary King let him down and
Yeah.
you
I
know,
would have done anything for you.
yeah, so
That kind of
Actually,
thing.
wait, guys, but you know what? I actually just had a thought, right? Because it seems like 20 years ago, Gary was sort of like the spoke that kind of kept that wheel of their friendship together. And then now here it is, like 20 years later, they're in their 40s, and it's Andy is the guy who's kind of like the spoke, because when Gary was trying to convince everyone to go, they were focused
all
on,
have
well, is Andy going to go, right?
yeah.
I mean, given the history, I mean, it's
Right.
understandable. But to your point, I would say that this would be kind of the break into two, or around the break into two, is when Andy does all the shots. And,
Yeah.
You know, and then they know shit. You know,
Well,
it-
Before
got
we
real
get
to-
there, let's talk a little bit about Catalyst, right?
right.
Because your inciting incident here, what Snyder calls a catalyst, I like inciting incident better.
I prefer inciting incident.
Yeah, you know, the thing that happens without which the rest of the movie wouldn't occur. So that's a little fuzzy for me here, right? Like, I mean, you know, we kind of know what happens, but what is the exact point where things start to go awry?
Well,
Actually,
Well, I mean, awry or start moving.
so I would say, like, it depends on your A story, as we would say in like one of our collective meetings. Like, what is your A story here? And if it's about a bunch of guys going on a pub crawl, the catalyst is pretty much, you know, the catalyst would be Gary calling everybody, going, "Hey, you want to go on a pub crawl?" But
Right.
it's about them saving the world from an alien invasion.
right.
But that doesn't come in until the second act.
Well, that's the thing. So my thought would be, when do they meet the twins, the twin girls?
That's
the twin
later
women,
on.
I should say.
I would say the catalyst is, if you're looking at the story as being the save the world, which I think you have to. The title of the movie is The World's End, right? So I think that things really start to go awry for them, you know, and you feel things going awry in, you know, in their drinking and their friendship and in what the movie is set up to be.
Right.
But things just go really awry when there's a fight in the bathroom and Gary rips the dude's head off, right? So
Okay, yeah, I was going to say, whenever they fight the first robot.
that's in the bathroom with the teenagers.
Yeah, okay, that's right, because it was the 5 teenagers, because he rips the head off of one, or one of the limbs comes off, and blue blood, as they say, goes everywhere.
Yeah, and I gotta say, you know what? The fight scenes in this are awesome.
Yeah, they had.
They're really good.
I gotta say,
mean,
Andy was awesome.
Oh,
Yeah,
Eddie's
I love
amazing.
when he picks up the 2 bar stools and he's
And he's just going at it.
And
know what?
he has like no compunction. It's like, okay, there's robots and I gotta fight them. Let's do this.
yeah, like it's like he's a hidden bruiser underneath. But
I
you
got
know,
to admit, in terms of like the actual film and filmmaking aspect of it itself, I loved Hot Fuzz. But one thing that I thought was like a bit of a thumbs down or half a star off or whatever was the action sequences. And I think that Edgar Wright learned a lot from Scott Pilgrim, because Scott Pilgrim is just a series of fight sequences. And so they were a lot better, I thought, in this. Like, the World's End had some great fights in it. And Andy being at the center of most of them.
I just love. He's a brute, man. He just
Yeah.
has take names.
And Nick Frost is a straight man, a comedy straight man, I thought it was kind of refreshing. Because he's typically kind of like the goofy guy.
Yeah, and like he's the kind of the loser, the goofball, or yeah.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah, but I will agree with you, Chris. And going from Catalyst into Break Into 2, I think like Break Into the act break, it hinges on a decision, and that's Andy's decision to like start. He just fires those shots down.
Yeah, we're gonna go.
He's like, let's
That
do
was
it.
awesome. Yeah,
And-
because the debate is, should we stay and complete the pub crawl, or should we get the fuck out of here? And then
Right.
any sane person would have left.
Yeah,
Exactly.
And he just says, you know what? You know we're gonna follow Gary anyway, right? Like you know it's gonna happen. So let's
Yeah.
just embrace the chaos,
Let's just go.
right?
Yeah. Now, I don't know if that's like the strongest debate in Break Into Two ever, but it's something I think that a lot of us forget as screenwriters and in the collective and so on, that we forget is like sometimes the suspension of disbelief doesn't need much. And I totally went along for the ride with this. Like, I would have completed the pub crawl. That's like a lot of beer to drink. They were on what bar? Were they at bar 2 or 3 at that point?
I think there were 3.
Maybe even 4, right?
Yeah, it was at least 2. It might have been 3.
So you got like 9 beers to go, all right?
Right.
And if you're going to be taking all night to do it, you got a lot of work to get in. That's a
Yeah,
lot
but
of
Chris,
pints.
are you going to continue the pub crawl after you've like gotten to a fight with like the robots and heads and arms have come off and
Okay,
you're like got blue blood all over you?
We're assuming I'm
Gonna
3.
Exit stage left.
Okay, let's just say I'm 3 pints in. Okay, my ass is finishing the fucking pub crawl. All right, and if you give me a shot at that place, and then you meet the Reverend Green, and you get some of his medicine.
Yeah, you know what?
I'm probably going to go to another town and do another pub crawl at that point.
Well, color me Gary, and Ashley, Andy, and I'll be right behind you.
I'm going to hold you
Yeah,
to
you
that.
know what?
Okay.
And like, look, you go with it because you want to, right? Like they say, and this is the debate, and the debate does bleed into after the act break, but that's fine. It's it's fluid.
Yeah.
But some of the debate is, are we really doing this? Are we really going on the pub crawl? And the rationale is, well, yeah, we have to act normal. Everybody knows we're going on a pub crawl, so let's go on a pub
so
crawl.
we have to keep
And
going on a pub crawl.
and they won't suspect the outsiders for ripping people's heads off. It's totally ridiculous, but you go with it because you want to, and again, this is comedy. Like you probably wouldn't go with it in
A straight up drama, even a science fiction movie played straight.
Yeah,
I don't think.
if this was a Shane Carruth movie, you wouldn't believe it. But
No,
but it's an Edgar Wright movie, so you do, right?
But there'd be, if it was a Shane Carruth movie, there'd be like strange worms and boxes that could travel through time.
Right.
Yeah, but we don't have that here. But yeah, I mean, I agree with that. It doesn't need much to get me on board, and I think the audience to go with it.
No, it's good, and things get good after that. All right, so now let's talk a little bit about the B story.
I put it down as Samantha.
Yes.
Yeah, I had the Sam Steven, not so much Gary love triangle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I like that. Not too much. We'll always have the disabled.
The disabled. Yeah.
And it kind of it was a throwback to the opening. It's like when he goes in with her to the disabled in the flashback and then comes out. I kind of wondered if like something similar happened to the present day one, like she smacks him or something like that. But
yeah. But I think so I think this serves on a couple of levels, right? It's normally very often the B story is the love story in some way, or it's a story that complements or mirrors in some way the A story. And so this does kind of mirror, or it does reflect this a little bit, because it does have to do with Gary's past, right?
Right.
The story that's going on here, has to do with him dealing with his past. Eventually, further down the road, when he decides to do the good guy thing and start not being selfish, it revolves around Sam, right?
right.
So there is the Gary and Sam portion of the B story, but there's also what was the other character's name?
Steve.
Steve.
Yep.
The Steve and Steve and Sam is part of that, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So let's. So we're now into the second act, which is our fun and games, right? And so, what's going on here?
Well, let me get into my handy-dandy Word document.
Oh, no, you wrote shit down?
Yeah, I did. I typed it.
Oh, yeah.
Basically,
Yeah,
they go basically from pub to pub, all the while fighting and dodging the robots.
Yeah, the fun and games is really the pub play and the interaction in the pubs. Like the Annie character going whole hog with the bar stools, the fight in the bathroom, the interaction with Sam,
The twins.
the twins starting getting a little bit deeper into exactly what might have happened with Andy and Gary, which I think, like, one of the ideas that I actually had for the B story is exactly what happened that night with Gary and Andy, and how is it that they ended up having this 20-year rift. I thought maybe that could also be like part of the B story.
I think that it tied into the internal arc of what was happening, for Gary, well, for the both of them, really. I mean, it's definitely, I guess the reason I first latched onto Sam as the B story is because it's an obvious love story, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's not unheard of or uncommon or so forth to have C, D, E, and so on stories.
Sure.
I mean, there's 26 letters in the alphabet, so you might as well take advantage. But yeah, I mean, I like that one too. But I mean, right now I'm putting my money with Sam.
Oh no, I agree. I definitely have that as the main B story.
Yeah, and I think like the other thing is that the history with Andy is that's set up from the first page, right? Yeah. Like is Andy coming, right? Like, we know that there's something going on, and we know we're going to find out about it, and that is part of the A story, about Gary. That's part of Gary's story, and it's definitely part of his arc, because later on there is that breakdown, the revelation of what happened, and why it hurt Andy so bad, and what that really means for Gary's vision of himself.
Now, do we, in this in the first half of the second act, this is when we learn about what's going on from, was it the Reverend and the crazy guy Basil, if I'm not mistaken, or is the reveal about the plan happen after that?
So,
the Reverend Green at the bar, is that when we first find out about the blanks?
Yeah,
I heard that there's a bigger conspiracy.
Yeah, so that's kind of the first admission of it, right? That happens a little bit before what's going on with Basil. Now during this, we do see Basil, right? We see him drinking through his crazy straw.
Right.
He's there. And
yeah, Basil spills at the Mermaid.
Yeah.
To Steve.
Yeah, but before that, we have the Reverend Green, and Gary's going to A, find out what's going on, and B, try to buy drugs from him.
Right.
But he does neither, because I mean, other than to find out that there is something going on, it's not what you think, or is it, right?
Right.
And there's these other two guys, I can't recall their names. They call them like the goofy twin. These two guys who are all about their captors, right? They love it. And it's the whole thing. Robot means slave. Did you know that robot means slave?
From the Robotnik, what is it, Czech?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're not slaves. We're definitely not. Yeah.
We're not slaves. It's but it's that thing, right? Like, if you say you're not crazy, you probably are.
Yeah, that's true.
And I'm not.
And that's a good point, because they never actually admit. Nobody ever admits. Well, like, this might, that might be what we're turning into when we go through the process. They speak of it in glowing terms and so on. But I like it that it is unspoken.
Sure, and this plays right to that theme, right? And like, a denial of your kind of your slavish loyalty to consumerism in the American way, and
the Starbucksification of the world.
You know what? You're just Starbucksed up, is what it is.
I'm gonna fit that into everyday conversation now.
Yeah, but you know what? I mean, I'm gonna challenge that and say that I think it was actually wasn't so much subtext and it was discussed, right? Because in the finale where they're arguing with the father figure, the mighty Bill Nye.
Who's in
like
all
the
of the
idea,
movies.
right? The idea is that you are once again. I would add that Bill Nye is a father figure. He's a father figure in Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah, because he's
So
the
it's like-
stepdad.
Yeah. So I mean, the idea is that like you're giving up a lot of who you are and your freedom for the idea of safety and comfort.
Right. I'm just saying
That's
they
because
never.
that's
They
what they're
never.
offered, right?
Yeah, but they never outright say like there's never an admission like, hey, okay, you were right, we're slaves, which is what I like about it. They don't like they think enough of us to not have to say it, which I think
That's
a lot
part
of
of the
movies.
seduction, right?
Yeah.
Right. Well, and the corporate wage slaves will deny that they are, right?
Right.
That we are.
Figure.
Or yeah, exactly. Or people who are, blind consumerists will deny that they are, right? Like that's kind of the theme here. Like, you're all the same. No, we're not, It's not quite Life of Brian. Or no, that's Meaning of Life. But anyway.
Either way, it's not quite a Monty Python movie that we've all known.
Right. But yeah, so what else is going on in the fun and games?
Let's see. Oh, it's Gary reveals to Sam. We have a lot more fights. There's the fight with the twins. It's just a typical kind of fun and games where it just things start escalating and the fun stuff happens and it's the kind of things that you'd put in the trailer.
Yeah, it is. And a lot of the stuff that you see from the trailer is coming from this, right?
Right.
And we're first seeing their blue eyes, I think, and I still don't understand why they're trying to grab you with their hand, right? Like it's I
was actually kind of wondering that too, and I was wondering if it was just a more practical matter of because some of the moves kind of struck me. I'm trying to think of for some reason it reminded me of a kung fu movie, but I just could not for the life of me remember which one. It's the kind of move. The defensive action is the kind of move I think you often see Jackie Chan doing in his kind of kung fu, or Jet Li doing in his kind of kung fu movies, and I don't know. I mean, that was what I thought. It just seemed like a more practical thing because it struck me as like if they got punched by one of these things, they would probably die.
Well, the idea is like, I think it's more of the genre trope, right? These things are kind of coming in and they're swarming over you and they're consuming you, and there's that word consume, right? And they're actually bringing you into the fold. The idea is to convert you into a blank.
And not kill you.
So they're not going to punch you because if they do, they're going to destroy you, and they don't want to destroy you. They want you to become one of us.
They want you to be Starbucksified. Damn it.
There you go.
All right.
No, so we eventually make it to the mermaid.
Right.
Yes.
Which at which point I believe is our midpoint.
Yeah, it's when Crazy Basil reveals what's happening, and that he wasn't crazy all along.
Right.
And while he's saying some of the things like about them collecting DNA through certain actions, we see it happening to the other characters.
Yes.
Yes.
We see it happening and there's a hint of something here. What was the name of the character?
A lot of sex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the name of the character with the thing in his ear? They call him O-Man.
Oh,
right?
O-Man, yeah. Shoot, where
Oliver.
Yeah, Oliver.
So
because he had the 6 on his head, and of course, so that's why they called him O-Man.
So this is the first, as they're going in, I believe, if I recall correctly, as they're going into the mermaid, is the first time where Gary calls him old man, and he doesn't correct him.
Right, and I think we've at this point been seeing the birthmark.
See, I don't know if you have at this point yet or not, but after this point, after I noticed him not correct him, this is when I started to look for it. And then you eventually do see it, but yeah. But so, what does the midpoint represent usually? It's usually a point of no return.
Yeah, it's when things really change.
The stakes are raised.
The stakes are raised. As we often say, it's kind of like it's a different kind of movie now.
Right, because now
the stakes are raised. As I was watching Bad Boys 2 this weekend, as Martin Lawrence would say, shit just got real.
Right.
That's a really long movie, by the way. Not to get too off track, but yeah, shit gets real. The danger becomes because of what Crazy Basil tells Steve. We understand that we're not just having an adventure here. There's something truly, relatively speaking, truly dangerous happening. Right. World changing, as we come to find out.
Diabolical.
And so, and in a way, it's like I think we're used to with genre picks seeing a little more. So I don't want to say definitive, but something more. I don't want to call this an info dump, but that's in a way that's what this was. But we do see the characters having their DNA lifted by the schoolgirls, the marmalade sandwich.
Yes.
And so, and that in and of itself is we come to realize, I guess, is kind of like a false defeat. They've had their DNA taken from them.
Well, it's also kind of a false success.
I mean, depending on how you look at it, it's a false victory.
Right. But so the other thing that happens after here, right? Like after this is what this is a turning point of, is at this point they're no longer concerned just with kind of being. They're no longer concerned with just kind of getting away with having ripped a couple guys' heads off. They want to get out of here now, right? Like they're like right, and even at this point, Gary even starts contemplating, let's just get the fuck out, right? Like,
right.
That doesn't happen. They end up continuing the crawl.
Yeah.
But
did the stakes go from just the town to the world? I mean, I know eventually it is obviously the stakes go from just this one town to the world. Definitely at the ending in the third act. But do the stakes get raised that much at the midpoint? I forget.
I don't think they really. That's left to your imagination. I don't believe.
My impression from Crazy Basil was that it was, even if he didn't say it. I mean, my impression was that it wasn't. It isn't just about this town. It's about a large scale thing.
Well, sure. What's a conspiracy if it's only Newton Haven?
Yeah.
Well, realistic, but that's beside the point. But yeah, so that we find out about the conspiracy. The marmalade sandwich happens, and so on.
Yeah, and and then they head out. So, what starts happening next? All right. So next, the next beat is what we'd call, or series of beats is what we'd call the bad guys closing in. Right. So in what ways do our bad guys close in here? And let's remember that bad guys doesn't necessarily just mean physical antagonists, right? Because we know who those are now. But it's also forces of antagonism, even within our core group of protagonists.
Well, in terms of a story antagonism, like there was something we didn't mention is there was a statue in the beginning mentioned by, I know Andy talks about it. A couple of them talk about it being about modern art, and it was a statue of something like an abstract person. And of course, now we find out that statue is a giant robot wandering around looking for them, along with pretty much the entire town. So,
right. So up until this point,
it goes from like a pub full of people, fighting them, to an entire town looking for them.
Right, and up until this point, they've just been getting weird stares, right? Like everybody in town is just kind of frozen and giving them these cold stares. Now,
creepy,
and it's creepy and it's weird, but now these people are coming after them.
Right, and so that's kind of the A story. And one thing that's revealed at the midpoint as well is that when a blank is created, it's a clean slate, which is why Oliver has the I guess it's on this side, the birthmark on his head.
Yeah, we take the DNA, right?
And so and one of the bad guys close in thematically, I think, is that these friends stop trusting each other because which is one thing I like about the script is that they tie in the thematic, the internal kind of arc, into the A story. We don't trust each other. You know, we've stopped being friends for at least a little bit, and the proof of friendship is based on something from the A story. So, you know, does Pete have the scar on his shin? Yes, from when somebody ran over it. Yes, he does. I forget what Steve. Oh, Steve had the scar on his ass. Yes, he has it. And he has either which is the big reveal in terms of his relationship with Gary, the scar on his femoral artery, or the one on his middle finger. And of course, he chooses the one on his middle finger to show.
Right.
And then, of course,
when they get to Gary, they say, "Okay, let me see your arms." We don't know what's wrong with his arm, right?
Yeah, that was pretty heavy, I thought.
Yeah.
But we kind of know why. At this point, we realize why he doesn't want to show them his arm, right?
Right.
Like we can figure that. Like, I mean, you know, you figure probably a quarter way in this movie that this guy probably tried to off himself, right?
Oh yeah. Because the tattoo isn't enough. You can draw the tattoo on.
Right. So what does he do instead? He goes nuts and bangs his head against the pillar.
Bashes his head in the wall. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's Gary.
I was like, holy shit, man. I have to admit, I thought, like, if I were one of his friends, I thought, I mean, if he's a genetic duplicate, he'd probably do that anyway. But it was still I thought it was a really powerful scene.
I thought, you know, and as we get further in, there's a couple things I could disagree with in this movie, but the acting is outstanding.
Yeah.
Like the pathos, you know, the emotional elements of this are great.
Well, that's one thing I like. If you go back even to Shaun of the Dead, I mean, in Shaun of the Dead, when his stepfather dies.
Oh my God!
He's given in the car, and it's like, and he says, you know, I wanted to be a good influence on you. I wanted to show you how to be tough in the world, and I was just like, this is a comedy horror film, and this is like such a heavy scene. And I mean, like, just a moment before, like, after his dad got bit in the throat by a zombie, his mom is like, do you need a tissue for the blood? And it's like this really funny scene. And then, of course, they have this heavy moment. And World's End just keeps on delivering with that. You know,
it just goes to show that you know, like, people, I think a lot of people who write, you know, comedies or want to write something lighthearted, you know, that they want to steer away from emotional weightiness. Another guy who does this really well is Kevin Smith, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, like, some of his movies, you know, you can argue with, but if you look at Chasing Amy, has some very authentic, very deep emotional moments. Clerks 2 has very deep, very authentic emotional moments. You know,
especially in the spoiler for Clerks 2, especially in the jail cell at the end.
Right. Yeah, it's outstanding.
But I mean, you know, it's interesting that you bring it up, but like with Clerks 2, you kind of have some of the, like, that overarching, one of the themes that we're talking about here, and this is the idea of growing up.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, but, you know,
I was thinking of this film from 1995 called Funny Bones with Jerry Lewis and Oliver Platt and this guy Lee Evans, and it's a comedy, but it has this really just devastating scene at the end, you know, between a father and a son, and it's like that was one of the best movies of '95. God, that's like a million years ago now. I should grow up and just move past it. But yeah, to your point, I mean, like, a lot of comedies, they kind of eschew the heaviness. I guess not necessarily the depth, but the heaviness. But I love that kind of thing in this.
Right.
In a comedy.
In the movies that do it, look, you know, they don't all usually make, you know, liar, liar, Jim Carrey money, right?
No,
but you know, look, we're talking about these movies that still impact us, you know, 10, 20 years later, right? In a way that those big blockbuster movies don't. So,
yeah, I get
so there's some real artistic merit.
Trilogy. We're gonna remember this trilogy as a series of classic films for ever.
It has already. I mean, the first two have an incredibly loyal following.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
And Spaced as well. So everybody
yeah.
got there much. It's on Netflix and Hulu. Watch it.
I keep meaning to give it another try. I couldn't get into it the first time I tried to watch the first couple episodes, but I keep seeing it. I keep seeing it on my TV when I'm going through stuff to watch at night.
It's amazing
Slow burn.
when they do the I guess the first episode in the second season, because it's right after the Phantom Menace came out, or maybe a season after the Phantom Menace came out, and it was awesome. I'm actually going through it again now, and I'm about 3 or 4 episodes in. And just seeing who is in that, this is back in 1999, just seeing the faces in it that I recognize now. Like one of the guys from Little Britain is in it. It's just absolutely amazing. And seeing the repeating actors in World's End, Shaun of the Dead, and Hot Fuzz, I absolutely love that. I mean, it's a great show.
Yeah,
the fact that you have not watched it.
I know. It strikes me as one of those things like Freaks and Geeks. I've started watching Freaks and Geeks, and I'm like, oh my god, everybody is in this show.
Yep.
Everybody. All of these people are in things together now, and they're like billionaires, you know.
Yeah.
No, it's one of those great kind of seed shows. But anyway, back on track. So other things going on in Bad Guys Close In, right? We are again, there's more good fight scenes.
Oh, they send Sam away, don't they?
Gary sends Sam away, right? So there's a turn here, right? Like when shit gets real, he doesn't really grow up. But he, again, he's been kind of proved right, that there is something wrong with the world, not necessarily entirely wrong with him.
Right.
And now he kind of comes into his own a little bit, and he gets a chance to step up and start not acting like such a dick, right?
Right.
And in doing that, part of that is him kind of acknowledging that he's not going to get Sam. That's kind of a joke, right? Like her and Steven.
They'll always have the disableds.
We'll always have the disableds. Great line, right?
Well, the reason I kind of lump it in with Bad Guys Close In is that, and this is something brought up earlier, I think around the Break Into Two, was she's the only sober one. Like, she's the only one who can drive because she's the only one who hasn't been drinking.
Wow. I never thought about that.
And he sends her away. And so she's the only sober one. Because he's determined to finish the pub crawl. And if he sends away the only way for them, that they've all agreed is the only way for them to safely get out, they won't have a choice but to finish the pub crawl. But
Sure.
I agree that he's done something somewhat more mature than what he's been doing.
I mean, it's mostly a selfless act, right?
Mostly, yeah. But then, of course, there's the rest of the drinking to be done. And I guess the Mermaid was the 4th or 5th bar, so there's a good 7 or 8 drinks to go.
Yeah, it's also.
I guess it must be the 5th, because I think the 3rd one he had to steal the drinks from the patio outside, which was awesome.
Oh, that was great.
Gross, but awesome. But that's the only reason I'd lump it in with Bad Guys Close In is that even though it's a fairly selfless act in terms of, I'm never going to be getting with you, it's also kind of a little selfish. I mean, that's my argument.
Yeah.
Just saying.
It's also not very well thought out because that's the real only way to survive for the other guys. There's a great fight scene here. Probably my favorite thing in the movie, as far as in terms of action, is the fight scene where he's trying to keep his pint.
Oh yeah, that was brilliant.
That was
reminiscent
awesome.
of
Like, Chris, you were talking about martial art movies, yeah.
Yeah, no,
that was.
And this is what fight scenes need to do, and so many fight scenes that you read by by younger filmmakers, or inexperienced filmmakers, but also screenwriters, but also by like in some TV shows, some movies, they're just kind of flavorless and bland, right? Like we talked about last week when the part of David's complaint was some of the flavorlessness in Kick-Ass 2s, right?
This does something. It gives, at least in terms of Gary, it gives him an external goal beyond the fight. And actually, I just thought of this right now. It was in a similar spot in Raiders of the Lost Ark. Not a fight over a drink, but when Indiana Jones is on the convoy trying to... in the convoy when he's trying to get the Ark.
Okay.
And basically his goal is, I got to get into the driver's seat. And what's keeping him from the driver's seat is a bunch of Nazis, and he's got to fight all these people. And so Gary's goal is, I'm at this pub, I need to drink. but
Well, I
everybody's
need to
knocking
get
the
this-
drink out of my hand.
I need to get this pint because I need to finish the crawl, right? Like,
And so
Right.
the point of it
That's
is
why I'm
like,
here.
and something that I think we could all learn from this is like in any given fight, there has, to make it interesting or flavorful, is to give it a goal that has nothing to do with fighting. So in this case, a drink. I got a drink.
yeah.
In Raiders, it's I've got to drive a truck. I have to get into the driver's seat to drive the truck. So I think that makes it interesting. And clearly, not every fight in World's End was about a drink. I think if you do it at every fight, you're going to strain credulity. But it makes the fight awesome. I think you're definitely right about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So at the end of that fight, right, they've kind of kicked ass, and the blanks are laying on the ground, and then more of them come, right? This is right.
Back to Bad Guys Close In. It's when they realize that, oh man, Oliver is a blank.
Yeah, that happens.
Did they lose him at the same bar that they lost him back in 1990? I was trying to remember that.
No. In fact, they comment. One of the things that leads you to believe that he's a blank is Gary comments that he's made it way farther than he did originally.
Right, because that's what I was kind of wondering. Is like, did he become a blank at the bar that he dropped out of originally in 1990, or did he become a blank at the bar where he met? I'm saying that because I'm kind of fuzzy on the details.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'd have to see it again to be able to tell because that's a.
That's why I think it's interesting because it like harkens back to Shaun of the Dead, where you get to learn the whole story because somebody tells you the whole story. And so it's like, did we lose O-Man at the same bar? Did he become a blank at the bar where he dropped out of in 1990? And I think it would be interesting if somebody could email us. Chris, what's the email address for the podcast?
You can email us and we'll cover this later, but scriptfeed@gmail.com.
Give us an email if you.
We want your feedback, damn it.
If O-Man became a blank at the bar he dropped out of originally in the 1990 pub crawl. But anyway, we were at All Is Lost, right? Or coming up to All Is Lost.
We're getting to All Is Lost, right? So
Still at Bad Guys Close In.
Well, what's your
you got anything else, Keith?
Well, okay, so like, in this case, since we're talking about like Edgar Wright, Bad Guys Close In, i.e. shit got real moment. For me, I want to say like, I don't know, because it may be All Is Lost, but when Peter is attacked, like
Peter,
like
that is All Is Lost.
All Is Lost. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I mean, basically, and there's a reason why, but if we can talk about it when we get there.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
It's a great scene, though.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's like some vindication, and then. Yeah.
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 All right. Well, let's get there.
Okay.
Okay.
So I had what Keith was saying is like Pete gets taken by the blanks.
But before he gets taken by the blanks, right? He's confronted by the bully.
Right.
And there's that moment where you think, like, he's going, the bully's like, you know what? Years ago, I was insecure, and I'm so sorry.
I've been
and
Starbucksified.
Exactly, homogenized, Louis Pasteur, and I'm sorry. And you think
Right.
Peter's going to accept his apology, and then just like, and as you can expect from these films, there's like that emotional twist, right? That comedic moment where he just goes apeshit and starts to beat the shit out of him.
Oh yeah.
And
that was
gets out
awesome.
some of that rage that he's been holding in for the last 20 years.
Yeah, that was amazing. I love that bit too.
And
It
But then
speaks
comes
to-
in-
Well, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say it speaks to something we talked about in the Kick-Ass 2 podcast referencing Hit Girl, and that her storyline in Kick-Ass 2 was kind of a nested arc. In Kick-Ass 2, by the midpoint, she had gone through a first act, a second act, and a third act. Her midpoint, or at the midpoint of Kick-Ass 2, was Hit Girl's third act. And I think something similar happened to Pete here because what you're saying about the bully, I would say pre-break into 2, in the first act, the bully comes up and asks for a stool from Pete specifically and makes no acknowledgement that Pete, beyond asking for the stool, that Pete exists. And Pete tells us, this guy used to bully me constantly. I missed more days of school because of this guy that I missed for chickenpox, to paraphrase Pete. And then, of course, by what we're saying is the All Is Lost, where Pete gets taken by the blanks, it's like a closing of his storyline. And so it's kind of like a nested first, second, and third act for Pete, at least thematically, or at least his internal arc is played out. Maybe not in a healthy manner. Maybe he could have had a dialogue with his bully, his former bully.
His dialogue wouldn't have been as funny.
No, his dialogue wouldn't have involved fists.
So, I'm not entirely sure that I agree with the loss of Pete as our low point.
Well, I would say All Is Lost. I wouldn't necessarily say low point because.
Well, yeah, I mean, All Is Lost. So I mean, I kind of use these terms interchangeably. But,
okay, see, I would say it's Dark Knight of the Soul is like the low point, which is what comes next. Because the reason I'd say, and maybe I got the definitions wrong here, there's like a whiff of death, and Pete getting taken is kind of that whiff of death. But I could be misplacing that. Maybe the Dark Knight of the Soul is what gets the whiff of death. Nevertheless, it's like
no. The whiff of death by Snyder's definition comes in All Is Lost.
Okay, and that's the only reason I would say it. It's they've lost Pete. It's like 3 of them left. They've got no way to get out legally, without stealing a car and driving drunk. I think even Steve leaves at this point, doesn't he?
So what? Yeah, there's a point at which they get separated from Steve.
He goes for the car. He goes for the Beast, which is similar to what happens in the opening sequence, which is the flashback. They lose Steve. He doesn't go back for the car, but he does leave. Like he winds up on a park bench throwing up, I think, in 1990.
Yeah, I kind of tend to think that the
Steve goes for the Beast, leaving just Andy and Gary to finish the pub crawl. They're going to pub 11, I want to say.
Yeah, but so there's that, but it's really only Gary still driving the crawl at this point. Or do they get separated at pub 11? I believe
go ahead.
But anyway, they make it to pub 12 to the World's End, right? And the deal is they figure out that in order to get to where they need to be, they need to go through pub 11.
Right, they have to run through it, and I don't remember a whole lot happening at pub 11 besides Gary getting his drink.
Yeah, Gary gets.
There's a big confrontation. Now that I think about it, happens at the World's End.
The big confrontation happens at the World's End, and
I mean between Gary and Andy, not
right.
Yeah.
Between Gary and Andy, and to me, I think. And see, this is where it gets a little bit muddy, but I feel that is kind of a low point. That fight between them. This is like the crescendo of the bad guys closing in because it's the forces of antagonism within the group, and it's these last 2 guys, and they used to be best friends, and they're going at it, and it gets down to the point where it just stops, and we see his wrists now, right, with the
with the bandaged up and the hospital tag and. Well, I picked that as Dark Knight of the Soul.
See, to me, that's your whiff of death. I think that the Dark Knight of the Soul here doesn't really take long. It's the like you don't have to do this, you don't have to do this. I do have to do it. There's just that moment of consideration, right? I think it all gets kind of the sequence is a little weird here, and I think it all kind of gets mixed up in this one moment.
Well, the thing is, so I have Dark Knight of the Soul as I have the wrong pub listed, but Gary admits that the only thing he has in the world is the pub crawl. That the best day of his life was that day in 1990. That life was supposed to get better and it didn't. Life was supposed to be cooler and it wasn't. And that the only thing he has in the world is the pub crawl because he's been in a hospital, he's been a drug abuser, he's been clearly an alcoholic. He probably to some degree compares himself to his friends who, he thinks are all incredibly successful people, which of course we know they're not. Maybe materially, but
at the very least they're not happy.
Right, and so the break into 3 because this immediately precedes the break into 3. You know, Andy's like, don't take the drink, don't take the last drink, you don't need to do this.
And the decision to pull that pump
is the break into 3.
Yeah, I agree. I agree there. So there's a little bit of muddiness in terms of the beat sheet there. I don't think that it's structurally unsound. I think this is kind of all tied up. This low point and this point of introspection and the decision to say fuck it and do something about it is all right there.
Do you think it's in basically in order and it just happens quickly, or is it just kind of all jumbled? It's a nice jambalaya.
I think it's. I mean, I think you could choose to decide. Haven't had good jambalaya in a while.
Yeah.
Hard to find in New York.
Yeah.
But no, I think you could look at it either way. I think there's a little bleed through in both of those. But
I mean, my argument just would be that it's okay to have it like that because in the Will Ferrell classic Elf, kind of all is lost, Dark Knight of the Soul and Break into 3 happen in like within 2 to 3 pages of each other. Like it does not cover a lot of I was going to say chromatic, but that's not the chronological space. Chromatic would be colorful space.
Chromatic space is something that H.P. Lovecraft wrote about.
Yeah, probably. Oh. Yeah, and so chronological in these last 3 beats, when you're really leading up into it, because they speak more to internal arcs than I think bad guys close in typically, or at least proportionally. They tend to come very quickly, one after the other, and then you break into 3 and you have your finale.
Yeah.
But Keith, do you have any disagreements with us?
No, actually, I was kind of thinking because when I was beating this, I was having trouble myself because they, with the bad guys closing, all is lost in Dark Knight of the Soul. Like you said, it does sort of bleed into one another. And yes, Chris, you can look at it in terms of
chromatics, apparently.
Chromatics, yes, the coloring. But no, I think the thing is, and even if it were like blended for what we're dealing with, and at that point in the film, in the world's end, as they're coming to the world's end, as we're moving into the break into 3, it works. I mean, definitely. Would something like this work, in a David Mamet film? Probably not.
Well, we could write David Mamet and have him write something like this and see what happens. Who knows? One thing to the, I guess, Dark Knight of the Soul, when Gary admits about the pub crawl, this was another kind of heavy moment for me that worked incredibly well.
Yeah,
it's kind of like I felt like I paid I got my money's worth out of my $14. That was a powerful. I think it was the most powerful moment for me in the film. And in fact, I would almost say in almost all the films, it was probably one of the more powerful in the 3 Blood and Cornetto's films. That it was probably one of the most powerful scenes.
I'm gonna say for me, one of the most powerful scenes is Shaun of the Dead. And while the stepfather becoming a zombie is powerful, or dying and then becoming a zombie, is when his mom dies.
Oh yeah, God, man, that was rough.
I mean, that was like.
You didn't want to bother anybody.
And then you had sort of like the friend with the shotgun with the rifle, mind you, who wanted to shoot his mom, and he's like, "Don't point that gun at my mom," and like just all of the emotion that was kind of just coming out of him, and sort of like, I guess drawing back to the fact that his stepdad is dead. I think it was pretty strong. And it's a close tie because. The sort of like realization and the reveal of like how he feels about himself. Like, and I'm talking about World's End, how he feels about himself and how he juxtaposed to his friends and like Andy means to him. Like that, like as you say, that's like, that's the money shot. Yeah.
I noticed we're not mentioning Hot Fuzz with any of these emotional beats, which sucks. It was such a great movie, but it just seemed to be missing that. I guess it was.
Well, it was an action movie, right? Like, when you look back, when you look at Lethal Weapon, do you have those moments?
Well, it was also Nick Frost's character that was the one with those emotional beats, I think, in Hot Fuzz. Now that I think about it, because he was the one that, it was his dad. I think that was. let me see if I can. I'm on IMDb with this as well. With it was his dad, Inspector Frank Butterman, who was kind of like the head of the town.
Yeah.
And so, but I guess maybe if Nick Frost had been the Gary character in this, I'd be throwing back to Hot Fuzz a lot more. But it's just I think it speaks to the talent of the cast and the writing as well in this one that is what knocks it out of the park for all these movies and the TV show Spaced. Chris Durham. That you haven't seen.
I'll get on it.
It's on Netflix, Watch Instant, and on Hulu Plus.
Oh well, I have both. So now I've got the paradox of choice.
But
I'll have to go back and forth between services.
Yeah, you should.
Okay. So great. So we've established that our break into 3 is the decision to pull the pump and
nothing comes out.
Nothing comes out. It's a bummer. But but so what happens now? Now we descend into the bowels of the earth and into the bowels of the conspiracy, right?
Yes.
Yes.
They face down Bill Nighy.
And this is this gets a little weird for me. I mean I didn't dislike it, but I'm sitting there watching it and realizing that I'm watching about 10 minutes of these dudes yell at a light.
Yeah. Given like the ending of Shaun of the Dead is the final battle at the Winchester, Hot Fuzz is the taking down of the conspiracy in the town. I don't think it was in one place in particular. It was like the town square, the grocery store, and so on, which are very visually kinetic sequences, whereas this one is a couple of guys in a bar yelling at a light.
Yeah.
I thought it was funny, but yeah, in terms of the endings compared to Hot Fuzz and Shaun of the Dead.
And in terms of like the multitasking that's going on in the rest of the movie, right? Like beer in the brawl scene, right? And like in terms of how kinetic is a great word, how kinetic the rest of the movie has been. Like I mean, it's okay for a movie to settle down, but I mean, it becomes a weird like happening style stage play for about 10 minutes.
Yeah, it kind of makes me think now that maybe because I don't think he ever gets the final drink, does he?
No.
So maybe like the final battle, like there should have been a fight, and the final fight should have been about him getting that drink, because that was such a great sequence. It's like now I'm looking back on it thinking maybe this is only 4.5 out of 5 stars.
Is it like the last image of the movie possibly him going to get that final drink?
Well, arguably.
He's going for water at the last.
It was water.
Okay, right.
But I mean that's saying that it doesn't matter. Like at the end of the movie, it doesn't matter, right?
Right.
Like,
he's not going for a beer. He's going in. Well, we can talk about this in the final image, but why he's going into the bar is totally different than why he's going at the beginning.
Yeah.
I think.
Agreed.
Of course, you could all disagree with me.
No, agree.
Yeah. But so the finale, the face down with the aliens. I mean, it was just really funny, just kind of affirming, like, we as people are crazy and insane and fuck ups, and we're gonna repeat history and we're gonna stumble through the galaxy, and we might be the least civilized out of all the solar systems in the galaxy, but hey, that's what makes us interesting.
And that's why you don't want none of this, right? Like that's what he says. He's like, we are fuck ups, and that's why you can't dominate us, and that's why you don't want to. Right? Yeah.
We're not going to be Starbucksified. Damn it.
Jesus Christ, man.
I just the last part of that, it's like Starbucksification, Starbucksified.
I like Starbucked up.
Starbucked up.
Starbucked up.
Oh man. All right. Starbucks.
All right. So we have this protracted heart to heart with
great debate.
The great debate, and it gets over, but the movie ain't over, right? Because now, like, they're going away, but they're not just going to leave us in peace, right? No. Which is a little weird to me too, because throughout the whole thing they say, well, we don't want we don't want to be violent, we don't want to dominate you, we don't want to we're not here to hurt you, but like now it's like I'm not just going to take my cookies and go away. I'm going to burn out your whole planet too.
I mean, but it's like what I was talking about earlier. It's like that was like part of the seduction. the idea was always for, you know, humanity to conform and to become robots or those slaves, and part of like this like intergalactic network of theirs. And you know, once Andy and Gary and Steve, like, you know, bucked the system and said, look, we're not going to conform. It ain't going to happen. We're fuck-ups. It's just not going to happen. And they're like, all right, well, you know what? Fuck it. We can't do anything with these guys. We don't want to have to deal with you. You know what? Like, you're not welcome to the party. We're taking our cookie tray away, and, yeah, we're going to close the door on you and make sure you don't even come upstairs.
They send you back to the Stone Age, basically.
There you go.
I mean, I guess this is why we get free Wi-Fi at Starbucks. It's part of the seduction, isn't it? They're going to take us, and they're going to turn us into blanks, and I'm going to bleed blue. What are you going to do, right?
But you know you'll be happy as a blank, right?
Yeah. Do you get the impression maybe that we've had fist fights throughout the whole thing? You know, typically it's like by the time you get to the final fight scene, you want it to be a pretty big to-do, with exceptions to some classic... I go back to Raiders of the Lost Ark on this one. I mean, the big fight scene in Raiders of the Lost Ark was in, like, bad guys close in. And then the finale was, you know, Indiana Jones and Marion closing their eyes.
Yeah.
But, again, there was a great visual with that because everybody was melting. Spoiler for a 30-year-old movie.
Nobody melts here.
Yeah, that's the thing. So it's like you get some great visual, like, computer graphic kind of stuff. A nice PowerPoint presentation, I guess you could say.
But I mean, look, even in Raiders, they have something else to do. Not only, you know, like, I mean, they have to not look. Right?
Yeah.
And that's a very small thing, but it's a very workable thing, and it's not as protracted as it is here.
Right. No, I mean, I felt like it basically works. Would I have liked to have seen something a little more kinetic and, you know, maybe a little more involved, like you Chris were saying about Raiders? Yeah, probably, but. You know, it's like I kind of have to wonder, like, what would you do that wouldn't feel shoehorned in or kind of unnatural even? But then again, it's like I'm kind of just going off the top of my head in, you know, this last minute. Not
sure, and you know, like I'm not saying that I'm disappointed with it. I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed the movie. You know, it's just that the change of tone in the third act. Kind of threw me a little bit. It took me out of what was of the movie. It made it feel very different to me.
Yeah, yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, you know, you could have had these guys get beamed into the Matrix, you know, OS system, the huge white room where actually Bill Nye walks out and they have a conversation with him, like face to face.
Yeah. I was actually a little disappointed that he didn't show up. But I wanted to see Bill Nye.
Like this disembodied voice.
Yeah, I mean, it was, you know, fine, but, you know, I like his mug. He's a nice guy. You know. It's interesting you mentioned The Matrix because it's like the resolution to the films, anyway, was like, okay, we'll free whoever wants to be freed. You know, this is really simplifying it. But we still want to exist as the Matrix. And it's like, could they have done that with this? Like, okay, we'll blank some people who want to be blanked, but you guys have to stay in Europe, and we'll take Greater Russia and Asia, you know, or we'll take the United States.
Yeah.
They don't leave. Essentially, they just split the real estate.
So here's my if I was doing a rewrite on this movie section, you know, which they never asked me to do. I don't know why.
Yeah,
but,
you know,
but go for it.
But so I thought I detected this early on. What occurred to me about halfway to 2/3 through the movie is, you know, if one of the themes of this is that Gary is in a state of suspended youth, I kind of thought, what if he was like the first model, right? Like you know, if you know. Like, I would do something like that, right? You know, like, he's one of them, right? I mean,
I see what you mean. Yeah. Okay.
Like, he's one of them, but
he's a Cylon without knowing he's a Cylon.
Exactly, right? Like, yeah. but he's you know, and that's kind of why he's still stuck in 1990.
Yeah, they
That's
make
interesting.
allusions, not allusions, but there's some accusations about the selective memory and things like that, because that's one of the running jokes is that he has this kind of selective memory about things.
Yeah, and so if you do something like that, then you give him a choice about his future, right?
Right.
And you know you pay off on the I mean, not to say that the theme wasn't paid off, but there's still there's a strong payoff on the theme of the movie, and it's a more active third act.
Well, that's a good point. Yeah.
But I was actually
I think ultimately though what you're saying there is in specific for you, but in general for I think the script itself is active. Standing around talking is technically being active, but I think the decisions needed to be a bit greater and heavier. I mean, this will be a classic for me, but I think maybe I'll probably love Shaun of the Dead more. I don't know. Strike me for blasphemy if you need to, but But anyway, so they leave. They make the decision, and the blanks leave. At least the bright light leaves.
Yeah, the blanks leave, the aliens leave. The blank masters with their weird robot leaves, and in their wake, a huge electromagnetic pulse that we have to outdrive, which is a good little scene.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. That was cool.
Right.
That was a lot of fun.
But it does spread across the Earth and sends us back to the Stone Age. Right. So in our resolution, right, we have we have these three guys who are left. We have Steven who hooks up with Sam, right? And they've got a nice little shack. He says, and it is a shack.
Does he say like who saw that coming? Like
he's.
it's like I was wondering, is that a joke? Like, is it a meta joke? Like, obviously that was coming. You know?
I don't know. And then you've got
Oliver. Was it O-Man is still, even though he's a blank, is still doing the real estate thing.
Yeah, but he's kind of like Wilson because he's got the ball on his head.
Yeah, I was impressed though. He clearly knows where he's walking. He's
he bumps into the wall at one point.
Yeah, but it's still you got to admit. I mean, it's still pretty impressive that he's still able to get around. I mean, I was impressed. Anyway.
Oh, yeah. And then you have Andy.
He's finally gone organic, which was a gag from earlier.
Yeah, but don't forget Peter, who went back to his family.
And they may not have noticed that he was a blank.
Right.
He's got the hand on his head, and his kids seem to love it.
That was awesome.
Again, paying off on the theme here, right? Because a lot of people who are this way don't know they are this way, right?
Right. Yeah.
Andy gets back together with his wife, right?
Yep.
There's that great scene earlier on where the redhead from the Marmalade Sandwich says, "I want you inside of me," and he punches into her and takes his wedding ring back.
Takes his wedding ring out.
Right? There's a little victory there. That's greatness. That's when
the Cornetto appears. And he's saying like he's gone organic and he doesn't really miss any of the processed foods from before the time that the blanks rose, and of course then there's him against the fence and the wrapper of the Cornetto. Yeah. I didn't realize at that point that they hadn't eaten one. I was like, oh my god, that's the first one to appear. So I was happy to see that. It was a mint one, as Keith has so pointed out in his tagline, in his lower third.
So that gives us everybody except for Gary, and we see Gary. Nobody knows quite what happened to him, but we get a little glimpse of him in the final image. And what's great to me is like the payoff for him wearing the Sisters of Mercy shirt the whole time. Actually, he looks like something more out of Fields of the Nephilim video, but still, it's that kind of like post-apocalyptic Western thing, right? Yeah. Like, and he walks in with the blanks of his friends, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The younger friends, yeah. And is his blank his younger blank? Because I don't remember Steve getting his DNA taken.
No, but I think didn't Gary destroy his younger blank?
Shit, maybe.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, okay. Gary destroyed his younger blank.
Okay.
There's only one Gary, remember?
Oh yeah,
Oh, that's right,
part,
that's right.
That's part of the finale there, and then that's important, right? Because that's him overcoming his younger self, his bullshit.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, okay. So out of
why
all the
don't we
bad things you said about the finale, one brilliant image that we
Yeah,
all
that's-
kind of forgot to talk about is him visually overcoming his youth and moving forward with the rest of his life. But hey, the rest of it was
No, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
So it was a little active, not as active as we were.
So our final image though is him and his boys, right? His boys from high school, coming into a bar, right? This mirrors the opening image, right? Because
Right.
it's them walking into a bar, except now it's a little different, right? Like the bar doesn't want to serve blanks, right? His friends,
Right.
and he and his sword have something to say about that.
Yes.
Yes.
This was something that I just wanted to touch on really quickly because it goes back to theme. For me, when I saw that, it was like Gary was living in a world now that could take advantage of his potential, whereas before he was in a world that could not. And I'm not saying that I'm spot on with that or hitting the nail on the head, but it's kind of like if the apocalypse had never come, like if the aliens had never left and sent the electromagnetic pulse across the world, Gary would still be in a life that would have sent him back to the hospital.
Well, yeah, I mean that's kind of I've mentioned a couple times that it's like the reality of it is that we keep finding out gradually that he's not really all that fucked up. The world is fucked up, just like he's been saying, and I mean of course that screws him up as well. But but the root of the problem isn't him necessarily. He's
Right.
got problems, but he's not the root of the problem. And I think that proves out here.
And I guess now it's just socially acceptable for him to act on fixing the world the way he wants to, because before, So, but I mean, I just wanted.
But now he's teetotal.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Yeah.
But it's like I did want to touch on that in a more appropriate spot. I wanted to touch an appropriate.
You want to touch an inappropriate spot?
It's a proper touch.
No, I wanted a proper touch.
It's a good touch.
Not a bad touch, a good touch. All right. Okay, so.
Here's the doll.
Yes.
Show me where it touched.
Yes. Where's the doll? All right. No, I don't have one nearby. Okay, that was the final image. It does mirror the opening image. Yeah. So.
Yeah. So we got a whole movie here.
Yeah, I think we do.
Any final thoughts on it?
I kind of wonder what that trio is gonna do next, and it's more than just a trio because even the producers from Spaced are in this. So what is like the next big project from this group? Because it's like this trilogy is over. I mean, is it going to be a Hitchhiker's Guide kind of trilogy where there are 5 movies? Because the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy trilogy is 5 books long.
Yes. Try means 5 in some language.
Yeah, that's true. Good. But yeah, I mean, I kind of wonder what's going to happen next because it's like I don't want to see this team stop. I do want to see more from the group. I want to see Nick Frost and Simon Pegg with Edgar Wright directing and Nira Park and who else? There's like Nira Park and 1 or 2 others from the Space team. Doing work.
Well, I mean, I think you just said it right there, right? It's them. I mean, Simon Pegg has already said that he wanted to revisit Space, and he wanted to see where those characters ended up and how they developed and where they are now with their lives. So the next step could be,
a Spaced movie, man.
A Space movie, or just like. A couple episodes, like a 2 or 3 episode run, right? On Space, like the Space Reunion. Hopefully,
just give us another 6-episode season. Give us 3 more hours of content.
Netflix could do it.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, absolutely. We should get on it.
They've done it before. Why not? Why not get Nick Frost in Star Trek with Simon Pegg?
That would be interesting. Oh man, I'd go to the theater for that.
Yeah.
All right. So I have like one weird trivia thing, and I'll get the link and I'll post it up. Like in preparing for the podcast, right? Like I was sort of like looking through sort of like weird trivia because dealing with conspiracy theories. There is one that's connected to this film, like the trilogy, and this is the idea that Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg, like this film is connected to this thing known as Project Monarch. In other words, in reference to the butterfly, which is supposed to be kind of like a takes off where MK Ultra, like mind control programming. And this site points to certain places within heavily Shaun of the Dead and with The World's End that they use to show that there's visual symbology that alerts to like this idea of MK Ultra type programming or of like humans to be slaves and sex slaves. Not drinking the Kool-Aid, but definitely something to kind of take a look at, because I was just like, what?
Totally have to post that shit.
Wait.
Oh my god.
Wait, let me understand. Are people saying that these movies have something to do with a real life mind control conspiracy?
Are they part of the conspiracy, or are they trying to expose the conspiracy?
No, not even they're part of it. Like they're propagating, some of the symbology that's used to communicate and further like subjugate those subjects, folks who actually have gone through this like sort of deprogramming.
Hey, I got one thing to say about that.
I'm
not a robot.
Neither
I'm
am I.
gonna say if they're part of this thing, fill the damn glass, because I'll drink that fucking Kool-Aid. I'm not a robot either, damn it.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
I would think.
Neither one of us are robots.
I would think thematically that they were against it, because in Shaun of the Dead, one of the visuals is what's his face? In Shaun of the Dead, Shaun goes to the newsagent and buys a Diet Coke. He crosses the street and he goes in and he grabs the Diet Coke and he pays for it. He gets the Cornetto and he comes back and he goes to his house. And that's repeated again after the outbreak, the zombie outbreak. And the same thing happens, but in both cases, Shaun doesn't notice anything. He doesn't notice the people making out behind him. He doesn't notice the guy down the street doing his thing. He doesn't notice a car on the corner, etc. And when he crosses during the zombie apocalypse, he doesn't notice the people getting chewed up. He doesn't notice the guy dead in the car. He doesn't notice the bloody handprint on the door of the refrigerator with the Diet Coke in it. He doesn't really hear the screams in the back room where the guy, the newsagent owner is getting killed or whatever. And he doesn't notice that his roommate is a zombie right away.
Right.
Hot Fuzz, you have a conspiracy that engulfs an entire town. People go missing and nobody really notices. And in World's End, you have an entire town that's been taken over, and nobody notices. And so it's like, to me, it would, if there's any connection to some kind of greater conspiracy theory in the world, it would be that they were fighting against it. They're saying, you need to pay attention to this stuff. You need to open your eyes and notice that there's a bloody handprint on the refrigerator. Notice that all these kids are going missing in this town, and the people who tagged, the wall of the pub are going missing, and notice that everybody is more chipper in this small town, and that what was it, that birthmark that your buddy had on his head on this side, it's back. You need to notice this.
Yeah, but sorry, Chris, it is not Project Mayhem. It is not an attempt to open the eyes and awaken us to the Starbucksification, that we have been Starbucked, and that
been Starbucks.
Don't Starbuck with me.
It's actually Project Monarch.
Project Monarch. You have to post this.
Absolutely. In fact, let me see if I can find that and then toss in the chat for you guys.
We have to post this in the the notes for this podcast, because
we'll get on it.
All right.
And if anybody knows anything about Project Monarch and any of our listeners or viewers, please send us what you know. We want to know. Scriptfeed@gmail.com.
All right.
All right, guys. Let's wrap this
All
up.
right.
All right. So I am Chris Durham.
I'm Christopher Viokas.
And I am Keith Miller.
And we are from the New York City Screenwriters Collective. We are a collective of working screenwriters working together to make our screenplays better. We have a process of screenplay evaluation, workshopping. We have weekly workshops here in New York City. Please check us out on our website. The Beat Sheet Edition. Meetup.com. Those will be in the show notes. We on the Beat Sheet Edition podcast with the script, we do the Blake Snyder Beat Sheet, 15 beats. That's going to be in the show notes too. Each of our hosts' beats will be in there. Things we agreed on, things we disagreed on. Feel free to take a look at them yourselves. Enjoy.
Contact us at if you have any actuallys or just you love
actuallys,
what
feedback.
we said.
Yeah, like questions, comments, call us assholes, whatever whatever works. Also, please subscribe on iTunes. Leave us comments on iTunes. We've got a few comments on there already. Some of them good, some of them bad. We want to know what you think. And if you write us, we'll talk about it a little bit.
What's our email address again?
Scriptfeed@gmail.com. You can also find us at NYC Screenwriters Collective on Google Plus or through Meetup.com. We're done, man.
This is
all right. All right.
Yeah, man, it's been a pleasure.
It has been.
It has. Thank you so much, guys. We will do this again in another week or so. And just a reminder, we are now only 94 episodes away from our 100th episode.
Really?
Yep.
Not bad.
Pretty good.
I was actually impressed for a second. I was like, really? Wow. Oh,
all right, guys. Let's call it.
Good night.
Okay.
Keith, Chris, thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.